Hello, and welcome to the Cultivating Confidence podcast. I am your host, Dr. Nicole Grams. I am a life coach who specializes in anxiety, health, and human design. And I also happen to be a functional medicine pharmacist. This podcast is a compilation of conversations that I've had with clients and colleagues. So listen in as we explore the mind, body, and soul's confidence in its many forms. On today's Unscripted episode, I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Sarah Jastram, and she is an amazing functional medicine pharmacist on the PharmD team, a good friend of mine, and a mom of two. I hope you enjoyed today's episode because we talk about a wide range of topics going from parental anxiety to human design and diving into functional medicine a little bit too. Enjoy. So what's on your mind?
I was going to talk about how you were talking about kind of the free flow conversation and my comment about the fact that I will probably cry. And I think that is a testament to the relationship that we have developed, which is kind of surprising, seeing as like we've really only started talking within the past year and only occasionally on that. But I think that like, you know, you meet somebody and you like, there are certain people that you have to work to be friends with and connect with. And then there are people who like you immediately resonate with.
Yeah.
And you're like, you get my jam.
Yeah.
And I may not fully get your jam, but like, I get it enough that we can roll, right?
Yeah.
Like we can flow together, whether it's, you know, talking about coaching or deep dive into functional medicine or laughing about the life choices around having children or not having children and the like being able to hold in our spaces like our choices and connect on a level that's beyond just like, oh hey, we have kids, isn't that great?
Right. Yeah.
So
well and it's funny because I mean obviously you love your kids, but also there's multiple layers to being a parent that I observe in so many people. And me being a cat mom, like I don't have a frame of reference myself for that, but it's so fascinating to like see my friends and their different personalities with their kids' different personalities. And like, honestly, what you're saying about working to make a connection, I feel like that sometimes happens with kids too.
You know, talking about like that connection, as an adult, some kids are just easier to connect with and other kids are like, no, I am a kid only person, like I don't connect with adults at all. Like don't talk to me.
I know that kids are so drastically different from one another, and like my brain now almost always goes to, I wonder what their human design chart looks like how are like, because in a lot of the human design world, there's speculation that, you know, kids know their energy. They don't need to be told how their energy works in relation to other people. They just automatically know. And then it's beat out of us as we grow up to conform to like what is expected of us, like shy versus extroverted. Like those are very clear like differences in energy and how your energy works. And even aside from childhood trauma and those sorts of things that come up for a lot of us, you know, in varying capacities, but like, what a, you know, I don't know where I want to go with this.
The comment you made about, you know, kind of like who your energy is now, and then kind of how it shifts as you grow older, and something I read when my daughter was younger talked about labeling the hesitancy that kids have when meeting strangers as shy, and that by labeling it, you are then giving them permission to not engage in social activity. Where if you give them different avenues of like, you know, maybe you don't want this person to give you a hug, but you're okay with a fist bump or a high five or a wave.
Sure.
Then allows the social interaction to continue. And they kind of learn like, oh, I'm comfortable at this point. Like, please, we're not going to go further than that at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But it also then doesn't put them into this almost social category of like, I am shy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then all of a sudden there's this sense of like, oh, I can get out of talking to grandma because I'm shy, or I can get out of calling for pizza because I'm shy. And it's like, well, no. We need to learn how to call for pizza, and you need to talk to your grandma occasionally. And so I thought it was interesting, because then as we changed that, and it was like, people be like, oh, she is shy. And I'm like, no, my daughter's not shy. She's just not ready to hug you.
Right.
I'm not ready to.
Right.
Like she'll give you a fist bump, or she'll talk to you in a little bit. We just walked into this place. And so I think kind of honoring where your kid is at has been something that, is both like a struggle as a parent.
Yeah.
Because you're like, come on, let's go. We have to do this, or I have this expectation. And then also being like, no, this is who you are and this is where you're at right now. It's just like that balance is always something that's like, okay, I have to like remember,
Right.
It's like, walk it back, Sarah. They're not an adult yet.
Yeah.
And so it just is an interesting thing. I want to circle back to something at the beginning, because you mentioned like you see a lot of parents, and I wanted to voice the fact that like some people have kids who didn't want to have kids.
Yep.
And I think that is a topic that doesn't get spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
And something that, like, having lived it, I think in some respects, it's like I totally get being a cat mom. Like some days I wish I were a cat mom.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, you're not the only one that falls into that category in my life. I have a few friends who obviously they love their kids. They wouldn't give them up for the world. They,
Of course.
That is true at the same time as like, this is a huge hindrance on my life in one way, or hindrance might not be the right word, but like, and like,
no, let's be honest, it is a hindrance. I had a kid a year before starting a year before starting pharmacy school. And everyone was like, congratulations, this is so exciting, you get to have a baby, oh, don't you love it? And I'm like, I never once in my entire life ever considered having, well, no, I should say I considered having kids and was like, no, that is not for me. And so all of a sudden I had to go and figure out like, what does it look like to do pharmacy school prerequisites pregnant?
Yep.
Because I have a theater major.
Yep.
So like, I basically had to go back to school on my own dime, on my own time, while working in a second job, another job, to do the prereqs to get almost a second undergraduate degree in chemistry to get into pharmacy school, apply for pharmacy school, and then go through pharmacy school with a kid, which a lot of people do.
Sure.
But when you're not expecting to do that, and you're like, this is going to be great, I'm going to be a pharmacist, I'm going to make 6-digit salary, and then me and my hot husband are going to like travel the world. Like,
and then that's maybe not quite the whole plan anymore.
So no, my daughter is great. Don't get me wrong. She is an amazing, amazing human being. But the amount of work that it took to come around to say, no, I do indeed want this person in the world.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to meet them, probably didn't happen until 6-7 months after she was born.
Yeah. Right.
To be quite honest.
Right. And I feel like that's a lot more normal than what a lot of people will let on. And there are other, on the very opposite side of the spectrum, I know people who are like, oh my gosh, I miss being pregnant so much. Like they have 5 or 6 kids. And I'm just like, that's my nightmare. Like, I'm very glad that fits you very well. I'm so happy for you. Like,
right. And I think, and then this is where it comes down to like, just don't judge.
Right. Right.
Like, there are cat moms, there are dog moms, there are like bird and chicken moms. There's all kind of moms out there. And then there are people who are like, I don't even want a caregiver mom role. Like that's not
Yeah.
who I identify with.
Yeah.
And so like, that's the other thing is like, okay, we just have to not judge and be like, okay, here's where you're at.
Yeah.
Cool.
And from my perspective, the childless, at least my specific childless perspective, um, like I have a very nurturing side. I want to nurture everybody, but I have kind of applied that to my clients and my patients. And like, that's part of why I stepped out of retail pharmacy was because like, I can't nurture my patients very much standing behind this counter in the way that I want to. Right.
Oh yeah.
Like, I want to step out. I want to dive in deep into your soul and pull out the stuff and like, here it is. Like, right.
This is why you make me cry.
Right. No, but like that's what lights me up so much to be able to do. And like as I get farther out in the world, it's like I don't know that I would personally be able to do this if I had a kid at home. Like I really honestly feel like I personally will be able to help more people because of it. And also like I don't know, I sometimes go back and forth between like, oh, well, if I had kids, I would have more of a reason to get out there and help people. Like, what? What brain? What are you talking about?
I will say kids mess up your brain.
Yeah.
Like, because you have like a whole new anxiety.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm not going to say like it doesn't matter if you mess up with a patient. Like, it does. Right?
Absolutely, it does.
It absolutely does. But in some respects, if you and your patient don't jive and you don't work well together, hopefully you can like find another provider that works well, or
move
you can
on from one another.
Yeah, you can move on. Your kids can't move on.
Yeah.
Like, you're stuck with them.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's so difficult to like describe just kind of this underlying level of like mild panic.
Yeah.
Mild panic that, it's like every time there's a school shooting, it's like, okay,
oh,
it's not going to happen at my school. It's not going to, like, I know every mom, every dad, every caregiver says that about their kids. And then it does. But like, you have to keep saying it about yours. Otherwise you like lock your kids in your room and you're like, you can't go to school because it might happen.
Yeah.
Or, like, we've got a playground 6 blocks away from our house and my daughter is allowed to walk there on her own. And so then of course the parent brain is like, she's going to get abducted. She's going to meet strangers. They're going to like lure her into the van. I'm like, no. I taught we talk about what to do to like scream and run away and fight if anything or happen. Like you say, brain, what are you saying?
Yeah.
And so it's just this constant like tamp it down.
Yeah, I will say the parenting anxiety is something that I have felt a lot of different types of anxiety, a lot of them, right? I've been through panic attacks, I've been through anxiety attacks, I've been through worrying about this, that, and the other thing, but parental anxiety is not something that I have had the pleasure of experiencing. And I do think about like how different today's kids are growing up versus us versus our parents versus like I feel like there is I don't even know if I want to call it an emotional maturity that's coming or that is more present or like emotional awareness maybe more so now of the like mental status of kids versus like you're meant to be seen not heard mentality, you know what I mean? And even just allowing kids the freedom. Like when I was a kid in elementary school, me and my friends would take our bikes and we'd be gone all day long doing all kinds of mischievous things that, like we'd literally buy fruit snacks from the grocery store and go sit next door in the dryers, like literally sit in the dryers and eat our fruit snacks. And then we'd go hang out at the park. We'd go, we were never doing bad things, but it was never things that like seemed like they would be allowed anymore, you know? And yeah, we got into some stuff and I I don't know how I survived some parts of it in my life, but that was more in the like teenage years, but like I don't know. It's just so fascinating to be the observer of like I said, how friends are raising kids and like how society in general, what we see on the media and those sorts of things, like how kids are not allowed to do anything. And is that better or worse that there's, you know, the freedom versus like completely structured everything, you know, like you need a balance between all of that, I think.
I mean, even in adult life, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
And I think your comment about like the awareness of kids' mental health, I think we're also in this point where we are aware of parent mental health as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yep.
Like, I don't think anybody would have talked to my mom about, and I mean, maybe she did, right? Like, she doesn't tell me, but she
Mhm.
didn't get to breastfeed my brother because of cancer and radiation
Mm.
treatments. And so it wasn't until later that she was like, yeah, I kind of wanted to be able to do that. And it's like
Yeah.
the emotional toll of having to tell a mom, like, you can't have this particular bond with your child,
Mm.
not just because like things aren't working, but like you are going to produce milk. Your
Yeah.
milk is just going to make your child totally ill because it's radioactive.
Mm.
You
Right.
know, it was just like having to deal with that along with having to go through cancer treatment. And like, it's like nowadays, I feel like there would be like, do you need a therapist? Do
Mhm.
you need medication? Like, let's get this stuff rolling right away because we know it's a hard thing to deal with. Where like my
Right.
mom or like my grandma, you know, it was like, have those babies, you're fine,
Yeah.
you know, or, and, you know, your kids are going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Where now it's like, no, let's talk about trauma informed care
Mhm.
in the schools and like, let's make sure our kids' mental health is, you know, being taken care of. Not that we always have the people to do it, but
No.
that's a
There's
different conversation.
there's yeah, right.
No, but that's your comment about like going on bike rides and like being gone all day and eating fruit snacks in the dryer. I love it. I had to convince my daughter that it was okay for her to walk up to the grocery store to
Mm.
like 4 blocks away and she can just take her money and she can just buy whatever she wants.
Mhm.
Like, I don't like if she wanted to, she can do that. That is
Yeah.
a thing she can do. And she was like, are you sure? And I'm like, you go buy lemons for me all the time. And she was like, okay. She like goes upstairs and sits in her room. Like 4 days later, she's like, okay, I think I'm gonna go up to the store and buy some sorbet. I'm like, all right. Like,
Yeah,
but
I in those situations was definitely more along the lines of like I need to go with somebody who is confident enough or like together we have the confidence to do it
right.
and like watch them do it but doing it myself, like I was very resistant to ordering food by myself with my mom standing next to me at McDonald's or whatever, you know, like
Mhm.
I was like, oh no, I can't talk to like I don't know that I was scared of the person. I was just scared of talking to them. You know, like it was fine that they were there and asking me questions, but I for sure was not going to answer myself. Absolutely not. And I don't think I got over that until I got a job as a hostess at Perkins, right? Like
Oh,
I literal 16, 17, however old I was at that time, I was able to drive myself to work, but like I was so shy that like yeah. So what you were saying before about shyness, I don't know if I was labeled that or if I mean, I genuinely feel like I was just scared to talk to anybody always. Like, unless I'm invited in, I'm
mhm.
not gonna, absolutely not.
But then that goes back to your human design,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because isn't that just generally part of who,
Yeah.
like your energy and who you are?
Right.
And
Like,
so, regardless of whether it got labeled as being shy or,
mm-hmm.
you know, this is just where Nicole is at, and will help you along.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of that, that would still have been who you are. Right.
Right. Yeah. And my design as a projector, my energy is very penetrating and it's very uncomfortable for people. So I have definitely learned to ask for invitations or get permission before I dive in on people, because otherwise it takes them off guard and I get labeled as things and opinionated and like trying to give advice where it's not warranted and like all of these things, right? I almost got fired once because I had opinions on, how things should be run, and I voiced them without being asked. It was like, but I can see how this could be so much better. And they're basically like, no, please stop. We didn't ask you. Bye. So yeah, like now my personality, like I'm obviously a different person than I was as a kid, as a teenager, even as a young adult, like even from 3 or 4 years ago. Like I'm a totally different person. And also I'm very reserved and quiet when I'm in a group of new people. And like more than once, I've been labeled as stoic. Stoic is the literal word people have described me as when they don't know me, when they've not had a conversation with me. So like if I'm in a group, a great example of this was like I went to a coaching retreat and I was just a participant. I wasn't doing anything or whatever. And I knew the coach who was there, and I had brought a friend who was there, and I kind of knew a couple of the other ladies from a previous one or whatever. But like I just kind of sit there and observe, unless, I feel compelled, I'll raise my hand once in a while, but like I'm going to be very quiet. I'm going to observe. I can see like the different personalities around me. Like my brain is constantly processing, like, I know who this person is and what their struggles are. And I like can't go up to them and say, oh, are you struggling with this thing? Because it's very obvious to me specifically. Like, no, you can't do. That's where like the invitation has to come in of the like, do you want me to dive into what's going on in your deep, dark, secret place? Right. Like it's just not okay to be out there.
That is like, I resonate with the like sit and watch when you don't necessarily know people.
Mm-hmm.
But then I get frustrated when nobody talks,
mm-hmm.
because people will be like, they'll say like, oh, let's open it up for group discussion. And then everyone, I don't know if it's like nobody wants to go first, or
mm-hmm.
like everyone is like real nervous to hear them. Like it just is one of these things where I'm like, well, if y'all don't have anything to say,
mm-hmm.
like I've got 25 things I can say, and I don't have a good filter between my brain and my mouth. Like oftentimes it's just word vomit, and I'm like, oh, hey, what did I just say? I wasn't even listening to myself. Sorry. And so I'm like almost the complete, like, I'll sit and listen and observe,
mm-hmm.
but it's because I'm sitting there like stacking up my ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, ready? When is it my turn to word vomit? Because I've got it going.
Yeah, I don't have that button. I mean, I can in certain situations, but mostly I sit there and like the number of times I have been able to come up with a question, slim to none. Like when it's open for discussion, unless there's some topic that I'm like, oh, this thing, I'm going to hang on to this nugget for the next 45 minutes until the like, but like and I always want other people to start the conversation because like I don't know how to initiate it usually. Like I don't know.
And maybe that's part of the reason why like we have that sort of resonance, is because like in our group coaching, you'll ask a question, and this is particularly difficult on Zoom, I feel like, because you don't want to talk over someone. So there's always like the like, well, if I go, there's that delay while I hit the unmute button.
Yeah.
And then somebody else might go, and then like I might cut them off. So should I? And I like, I'll wait and then be like, okay, nobody has gone.
Mm-hmm.
So I am going to answer this question, or I have an experience to share. I have some sort of comment to make after what you've said.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like when you, like in the times when we've been in discussion and you have something to say, or you come in, I feel like oftentimes you almost have like the mic drop moment of like, of like, here's this really deep thing that's been like kicking around in my brain, and I've thought about it, and I've like fine-tuned it and finessed it, and like here is my thought, and it's like, oh, that's a really good thought, Nicole. Like I need to like go back and like actually think about that, because whatever your comments are thought-provoking and like hit the right buttons to say like, oh no, we need to stop and think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I 0% of me tries to do that. That's just like naturally how my brain works. So it's so fascinating to like compare that to what human design says, and like I've looked at your chart, I've looked at several of our team members' charts, and it's just fascinating to see how well it lines up without anybody trying. That's why I get so excited about it when other people are interested in it, because I'm like, yeah, this changed my life and gave me permission to be me. Can I tell you all about you?
Right. I just like this is one of those things. So when I was in high school,
yeah,
but we would go and hang out in Barnes and Noble and go find like the astrology books and like look up when you were born, and then read about like, oh, you're supposed to be like this and you're supposed to be like that.
Yeah.
And I was born a Gemini, and so I always have like, oh, they're the twins and the two sides of your personality. And I sure as hell played that up when I was a teenager. I was like, bring it on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can be like sweet and sour at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's interesting looking back on it now, and then kind of in the relation to when you've read my human design and contrasting like who I was in my 20s and who I am now. And it's like, oh, this is a much more like a much deeper and more thorough idea of that sense of like the twins, or like the duality of not even necessarily personality, but like what your life looks like and who you are and what your goals are, because I am certainly a different person.
Yeah.
And like Brian, my husband, will ask me like, oh, do you wish like to be like that person again? And it's like, oh my gosh, no, that would be so much work. Like to keep up on just the number of people I knew and like considered close friends. It's like, holy buckets, that was a lot of energy that was being put out versus like energy being balanced between putting it out and keeping it in.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that in a way that's like, I was trying so hard to be liked that you lose. I mean, this is so common in so many people of the like, I'm focused on like how I'm perceived. And I think part of the most amazing thing that I have been through, especially in the past few years, is like, we're going to care a little bit less about what people think of us and give ourselves permission to just exist as who we are and make mistakes and like do all the things and follow our passions, even though they're weird. Or like for the longest time, I refused to mention anything about astrology or human design, or like the fact that I have several crystals hanging out on a shelf over here. Like crystal, okay, like let's just talk about crystals for 1 second. Like worst case, they're pretty rocks that I get to look at and they make me feel good, right? Like I'm not going to buy into everything 100% all the time. And that like applies to everything in life, right? Like,
of course.
But like do what makes you feel good. But I refused to talk about most of that stuff at like on my social media accounts, because I'm like, oh my gosh, the whole medical community is going to cancel me for sure. Like they're not, but like half the people I talk about this stuff with are other medical professionals. And I'm just like, why am I hiding this? There's more of us out there, and nobody's going to find me if I'm not me. And that's a big part of who I am, is looking at tarot cards and talking about weird stuff, right? Like that's what I love doing.
Oh my gosh.
So like that permission to just, all right, we're going to care a little bit less about the people who think I need to be canceled because I own a tarot deck, right? Like what?
But also like by talking, you find your tribe.
Yeah.
And I think that in pharmacy specifically, it's hard to find the tribe of individuals who, there are a lot of pharmacists I don't get along with.
Yeah.
And like I don't fit in with.
Not bringing it back to human design phrasing again. That's what we call finding your fractal line.
Your what?
Your fractal line. Like
Fractal
basically
line. Okay.
the people who resonate with you are on your fractal line. And then there's some that you're just never gonna be able to reconcile with, just because you either have different opinions, or you could be talking about the same thing, but you're like, no, that's not my no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Finding your people.
And
yeah, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I think pharmacy in and of itself tends to bring in a certain crowd. And I think that when you start getting into alternative health and healing models, right? I feel like there's a lot of pharmacists who maybe are interested, or they're like are aware of this pool of interesting stuff, and they're like, that might be interesting, but we're so indoctrinated into this sense of like evidence-based medicine is the only medicine available, and if you can't prove something with a clinically controlled, randomized, clinical, placebo blinded trial that's funded and has all these participants, and it's like that, I think there's value in that. But I also think that there is a lot of value in this pool of other modalities that, I mean, if we just look at the risk benefit ratio, which is what I go back to, because that's what a lot of this is about, right? Like, what's the risk of taking the medication versus what's the risk of following a diet plan? Well, the risk of the medication is relatively high, actually. Right? Like there's side effects, there's possible interactions, there's a potential it couldn't work, there's nutrient depletion. Also you could have an allergic reaction. Like it's really low, but you could.
Yep. Sometimes stopping it is an issue.
Like there's a whole can of worms with that. But if I say, okay, well, let's try this diet for the next 3 months, the worst thing that can happen is that you end up having better food on your table and you eat it. I mean, maybe you get constipated because suddenly your diet's changed, but we can solve that problem.
Right.
In a significantly easier way than like I have hypotension because my blood pressure medication is dropping my blood pressure too low. Like that's suddenly we have to titrate. And I feel like there was always a resistance within, I'm going to say kind of like the broader pharmacy community of like, we can't have those conversations about diet and lifestyle or any of this other stuff because we don't have this body of evidence. And it wasn't until I branched out and found a holistic medical community who included all these other practitioners, and they talked about evidence-informed care. And I was like, yes. Yeah. That is so much better, because then it's going to take all of the evidence, including case studies, and we're going to say like, oh, we're going to look at your care and we're going to look at it in a personalized manner. And we're going to say, what is the evidence that supports what we're doing? And we're going to inform your care with the evidence, as opposed to say, the only care we can do is based on specific graded trials. Finding the community within pharmacy that's like open to that was really, really hard. Yeah. Especially when you're stuck in a retail setting and like you say, like, you don't know if you want to talk about crystals or diet. It's like people bring in pizza and they're like, Sarah, you want a piece of pizza? And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, oh, do you not like pizza? And I'm like, no.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with me. I just like, it's not real cheese and it's like processed. And I brought like homemade chicken tikka masala. So like I'm not going to get stomachache from my lunch, and then I'll be able to complete my shift, where if I eat your pizza, I'm going to be in the bathroom 6 times and you're going to be like, who's this pharmacist?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We could go on a whole new rabbit hole of like the socialization of food. But I wanted to go back. There was something you said, looking at the risk of taking medication versus the risk of changing your diet. And like, I'm going to bring it all the way back to the energy work, the crystals, the, that side of things. Like, what's the risk of that? Right? Like, if I go in for a Reiki session with somebody, worst case, somebody's going to wave their hands over me for an hour, right? Like,
amen. Yes. They're not actually, yeah.
They might not even touch me, right? Like, what's the risk in that? And worst case, like, you sit there in kind of a meditation, there's usually music going on. Like, you get to relax for an hour and let your brain just kind of rest, right? Worst case.
Yep.
Worst case, you feel a little weird because you're like, what is this person doing?
Right. Or you're like, like you might feel uncomfortable for an hour, 30 minutes, but you're not going to end up with physical harm.
No.
Right. Which there is potential in medications. Like, I don't want to scare people and say, oh, don't take your meds because they're going to harm you, but just, I mean, it's the same.
But there is risk in that.
Yeah. There's risk taking Tylenol and ibuprofen. There's risk getting in your car and driving down the street.
Yep.
I think that you're spot on as far as like the risk of having crystals that make you feel better in your house is you have some pretty rocks.
Right.
And like the benefit could be life-changing. Right. They could open up an aura that you don't even realize is closed. And but like you suddenly have clarity of thought in a certain way. And you're never going to find a trial that's going to support that. I don't even know how you would design it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think what part of the problem, because I know we're running kind of short on time, but I think one of the problems that happens with the big trials is that they're trying to change one specific thing. And in functional medicine and in Ayurveda, whatever, type of alternative thing, you're not just changing one thing. You're looking at sleep, you're looking at food, you're looking at movement, you're looking at, are you feeling connected in your community, right? What are your stress levels like? Are you able to take care of yourself? And like tweaking all of those things at once are what we're trying to do to help people find their health and wellness and feel good in their bodies, right? Like you can't just give somebody a pill and they're automatically going to feel better, they're going to sleep better. Like there isn't one that exists. Otherwise, everybody would know about it. Everyone would be taking it, right? We're not able to live life in a vacuum like the studies are trying to show. And like it just doesn't work that way, right? But
that's so true. Way to sum it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for going on this journey from parenting to human design to pharmacy world and functional medicine. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was super good to chat with you.
All right. Until next time.
Thank you for taking the time to listen in today. Many of you will be able to take the ideas that you've heard and apply them in your daily life, and that's really all you need. That's amazing. But for those of you who could use a little one-on-one help with how to make these things actually work for you in your real life, please reach out. The link to schedule a consult with me is in the show notes. You don't have to do this alone. See you soon.